It's the afternoon jam broadcasting live on 98.5 The Wire, Orlando, Florida, 103.7 The Beat, Muskegon, Michigan, and Power 105.3 in Benton Harbor, Michigan. This guest coming up, Big Rob, is very special to me. I saw when she was first elected as a state attorney, as the first Black state attorney in the state of Florida. And she kept her promise of police reform and connecting the citizens with the police department, connecting the citizens with those in charge of law enforcement, and she have led the way. When I say pound for pound, is if she was in boxing, we'll call her Floyd Mayweather. You know what I mean? If she was a rapper, she would be Jay-Z.
No, why you gonna say Floyd? You got to give her Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali or something.
She from Michigan, just like me and you. So we got to do it right, and we're so proud of her. So proud of her. The pride and joy of Saginaw, Michigan, a University of Michigan grad, the first Black state attorney in the state of Florida. We want to welcome to the show Aramis Ayala. Aramis, how you doing today, my good sister?
I am good with that kind of intro. You make me feel good. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Yeah. That's all. Just all facts. Just all facts. You've been out of office since January. How you been doing?
You know, I've been good. It's always good to recalibrate, to reset, because if you continue going in a direction of politics, you become a politician. Every once in a while, you got to take a sit back, readjust, realign your views and your values, and then you jump back in it.
Wow. So where were you at yesterday when they announced the verdict?
I was in my living room with my husband. I called both my daughters in and told them they would never forget this moment. And we sat down and we watched the verdict together.
Did you expect 3 guilties?
You know, I didn't know. And when we're all honest with ourselves, we didn't know. I was prepared for a not guilty just because of the momentum that had been behind justifying the killing of Black men. But I also knew that you had undeniable evidence with that video. You know, quite often we see videos, and in those videos, it's like, oh, well, we don't know what happened before. That was just a short clip. This was 9 minutes of a video that squashed all of those conversations, those concerns, those questions, the speculations. We know exactly what happened all the way until he took his last breath.
Wow. Would you like to have been the prosecutor in this case?
I think Blackwood, I think he did a great job. You know,
yeah.
I think that he prosecuted the case with precision. Understanding the need to sometimes go outside of the system, since the former chief medical examiner was hell-bent on making certain that he testified to support the killing, and not actually understanding that the cause of death was in fact a homicide. So having to do that as a prosecutor is extremely difficult, but he overcame it. The jury saw it, and we got the verdict that I believe is just in this case.
Wow. What happens from here? Because you ran on reform, and so this is nothing new. This is what you've been doing. You're leading the way. Where do we go from here?
You know, I think that we have to take a moment to just breathe, you know, as he couldn't. This is a moment to just breathe, to take it all in, that there is a chance, there is hope. What we cannot do is be intoxicated by this, but remain sober, understanding that there is still a long way to go. You know, last year when this happened, I wrote an article that was published by BET. And in that, I talked about we have to remember this dysfunctional relationship with police and how it often mimics that of a domestic violence relationship having to do with power and control. And you get on that cycle where you're dealing with the honeymoon stage, you're dealing with the climax, the tension building, all of those things. And we hit the climax when he was killed. And a year later, we're ready to start the honeymoon stage. But we've got to take advantage of this opportunity to exit the cycle of violence with police, to reform the relationship, repair it, restore it, or actually even start it all the way over from scratch, so that we exit this cycle and the harm can at least begin to stop. Can stop, and the healing can begin for the communities.
As the former top cop for Central Florida, for the district in Orange County and Osceola County, do you believe in police defunding the police or reform? What are your perspective on that?
I think that it has to be bit by bit. We are not in a position to just cut the structure. We have to be mindful that there are dangers in our communities. There is violence, and we need someone to call. So just to say that we're going to eradicate it would possibly do more harm. When you build a society that stands on that as a foundation, that stands and expects to be able to call 911, expects a police to show when someone is robbing your grandmother, when they're burglarizing her home, home invasion, all of those things, it's important to have police. The condition in which we're functioning today is not acceptable. It is destructive. And not only that, for our community, it is dangerous. And therefore, this country, it is dangerous. So we've got to do something different. I think that police work is necessary. I think that, and not just in the cliche, I think we have police who do really good work. All of us have had a good incident. But just like any other group, we are judged by our lowest. We are judged by our worst. And until we come to terms that we have to stop talking about the good apples, but recognizing the ones who are destroying the entire structure of policing and what we call public safety, until we recognize the need to do that, then we're going to remain in, like I said, this cycle of violence.
Wow. We see these cases a lot. It always appeared to be white men or white women and black folks. Have we seen a trend of black police officers doing this?
I think that we have to be mindful that there is policing is not a black or white thing. There's a reason that they say Blue Lives Matters, because there's an indoctrination that occurs, whether a person is black, white, blue, or purple. It doesn't matter. There's an indoctrination into policing when you study, which I did with my master's, how the culture of policing, you take a hold of that as you go through your orientation, as you go through the process, as you're out on the road and patrol and you see things. There are ways that you are taught to process that. So in that regard, I think that it's important for us to understand that it is not policing and then black and white within there. It is racism. It is white supremacy versus black people. And when you try to get in there and try to begin to delineate and separate that which was within the blue line, the blue code, and all of that, I think that we do ourselves a disservice. The real issue is the treatment of Black and brown communities. The real issue is the treatment and the abuse and the harassment and the dysfunctional relationships, not what happens internally. With that is a distraction to the ultimate goal, to make certain that Black people are treated as humane, that people understand their lives matters, that they are entitled to a level of human dignity where, unlike George Floyd and so many others, they don't have to prove their innocence as a victim. For far too long, Black victims have carried a presumption of guilt as their person who killed them is being justified. We have to go through this process in the criminal justice system where we presume that they did something to deserve that, and then we have to retract and work backward in order to prove that it actually was a killing versus accidental, or is indeterminate, or some other thing other than what we need to call it, and it's homicide.
Wow. And Rob, I'm coming to you after this next question.
Mhm.
When you was a state attorney, you had a bad cop list. And I don't know if anybody else in the state of Florida had a list like that. Was it hard for you to put this list together and be bold enough to say, I'm going to put this list out so the public can see these are the bad cops?
I think that we have to stop weaponizing the idea of being right, of being truthful, of being fair. So when you do what is right, which is calling attention to dangers in the concept of public safety, that doesn't require boldness. It just requires a true heart's desire to speak truth to power, to make certain that within your power, you are emanating truth. So no, it was not difficult. What was difficult is trying to understand the mentality of those who thought that it should be any other way. That was the challenging part, because having to communicate to people and understand where their mind comes from, that they would want to protect someone who is a danger to the concept of public safety, is a problem. When you think about all of us wanting public safety, and we call police for public safety, we don't call them to be killed. We don't call them to be beat up. We don't call them to be harassed. So in that regard, I think it is extremely important for us to understand that having what is a Brady list, that is a list of officers who have have questionable histories and or conduct, which I started in my office, that's necessary.
Wow. Go ahead, Big Rock.
Where did you get your passion for justice? Because most prosecutors don't have passion for justice. You seem as though you have a passion for justice.
I do. I give that to the way that's just how God made me. There's something that was in me, even in the 5th grade, when I told my 5th grade teacher I wanted to be a prosecutor. And all throughout my life from that point, I was naive enough to believe that we could make change as a prosecutor. And I held on to that. I protected that in my heart to never become hardened and think that we could not do it. And then once elevated to the position, I was committed to actually doing it. Now, I will say, having a brush with cancer, being 24 hours from death, while in law school, definitely confirmed that desire. It highlighted the value of life, and that one day we all got to meet our maker, and we all got to give an account for how we treated others, and whether or not we recognize the humanity that God gave them, not us deciding that we can revoke it.
Wow. How did we lose Aramis Ayala here in Michigan? How did we lose her?
So my dad, who was there, sent me a picture of snow today versus right now me hoping my kids aren't too loud in the pool. That's the beginning of it.
It was an easy choice.
It was an easy choice.
No state taxes either. I'm sure she enjoyed that extra 10 or 15,000.
How did it feel being Florida's first Black state attorney general? I mean, how was a state attorney? I'm sorry, yeah, we different here.
It was. I will tell you, it was an honor. It carried a heavy weight. And I say that because we always talk about people breaking glass ceilings and celebrating it. But when you're the person who's breaking that glass ceilings, you got scars on your head to prove it. You're going straight through. There's injury, and the pressure to make certain that you take with you all your life experiences and actually show people that you are not just a diverse face, but a diverse mind and a diverse heart who is committed to diversifying the mindset of prosecutorial accountability and changing the status quo. Those are things that were important to me as the state attorney, to leave a legacy that changed that standard. And we worked really hard on that. So I would say that it was challenging, but it was a challenge that I welcomed, and I think that we took on very well.
Wow. Now, PA, I told you before we even got on here, I had to ask her this question. Ahead, do you think it's okay? The question I wanted to ask is okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Y'all didn't prep me for this. Where are we going?
You went viral when you got stopped by some officers who did not know you were Florida's state attorney. And you handled that like a champ. I was cringing looking at you. I was like, oh, that's how we supposed to act? Because I'd have went off. Whatever happened with that whole situation, if you can talk about it?
I can totally talk about it.
Okay.
Let's start from the beginning. If you look at the date of the stop, not when it continues to go viral and blow up again, it was the day after the police officer who killed Philando Castile was found not guilty. It was also after I had received multiple death threats. I had received a slew of emails from the local Orlando Police Department that were extremely demeaning, as well as appearing to be somewhat threatening. So that was there was a degree of fear. At the end of the day, I still know who I am to them, despite who the people decided that I would be in that position. So knowing that, I was afraid. But I also knew, that, like I said, I'm always prepared to meet my maker. So I was in that moment trying to do the right thing, trying to maintain a level of civility, but also understanding that I did have a level of power to ask the right questions, to hold my head high. I had done nothing wrong. Didn't run a stop sign. And I know there's conversation virally whether or not my tent was legal or not. I was a state issued vehicle. So there was nothing wrong with the vehicle at all. Didn't run any lights. It literally was a protected tag that they ran in at what they call a high crime area, because I was cutting through to get home. you
Mhm.
know, and so they stopped it, saying that they didn't know what it was. Now, in the end, the police chief, who then became the new sheriff, and I had some really, really, really difficult conversations that did not result in the change that I would want to see. So what I did is I tried to develop a program that would address situations like that. There are so many people, Black people, brown people, poor people, who encounter police with pretextual stops. That we know exactly what they are, even though the Supreme Court has declared that they are not unconstitutional or inappropriate. I believe that too many of these stops are unnecessary and can often, as we see, lead to harassment, lead to abuse, and ultimately killings. So I created a diversion program for resisting cases so that people could watch a video, understand the danger that they're in, and then the case goes away. That was an important part of me to make certain I did something within my position, since I didn't have the collaborative work group that I would have liked, who was as committed as I was to recognizing the injustices that people in certain communities encounter on a daily basis.
Hold up, sis. Hold up. Hold
Yeah,
up. Hold on, hold on, brother.
yeah.
Hold
When
up,
you
Rob.
get done, let me say something.
I didn't know you did that. You created a program because we know R&O is very popular. They love that one.
Yep.
That's like the #1 hit in criminal justice system. You create a program where they just watch a video and then the case is done.
Yep. I created the video. I didn't delegate that to someone in my office. I created the video because I was concerned about all of the resisting aspects of it, where you have a standalone charge. The only thing a person is being charged with is a resisting. It perpetuates this mindset of do as you're told. And I would add a word there, but I think you understand.
Yes.
And I did not want to do that. So instead of people being afraid and being concerned, then they have an opportunity to watch the slides, watch the video, understand the danger that they're really in, understand their options, understand the injustice, and how, unfortunately, sometimes there is a pill to swallow in order to make it home. So that was the conversation, but it wasn't a like, hey, just do what you're told. It was no, you, in order for you to be safe, there is a degree of doing what you're told, but understand, I don't think that it's fair. I don't think that it's just, and I don't think that it's safe for anyone to have that mindset, but we want you to make it home. And that diversion program started before I left office, and it remains intact now.
Shout out to Monique Royale. Yes, yes. Big Rob.
I mean, I guess one comment I wanted to say to you, it's like you're in a mountain of salt, and you the only pepper speck there. That's what it seems like you were up against, not just with this situation, but with the whole totality of you getting elected, everything. You know, again, what makes you so strong and willing to fight that fight? That's, most people will look at that and be like, that's just too much.
You know, it was the support, and I always give my husband amazing appreciation and gratitude and honor, because stepping into this, we had to be willing to lose it all. You know, we were going up against an incumbent. We were going against power. We were going against the grain. Even people who look like me did not want to be associated as we started, and even some now, but I'm okay with that. I think that we've lost sight of the let's be willing to lose it all, because that's the only way you start really making change. The issue is we can't be willing to lose it all every time. You've got to find a couple of issues that you are completely passionate about, stand on those unwaveringly, committed, and do it unto what is right and what is righteous, and you will win. It may take, difficult days, challenges, but you have got to be willing to lose it all in order to gain more.
Wow. We're live with Aramis Ayala, Florida's first Black
Wow.
state attorney, live on 103.7 The Beat, 98.5 The Wire, and 105.3. This comment is online from Mary up in Michigan. She said, I see where many states could and should duplicate your policies and procedures. She is on point. We know Kim Worthy in Detroit issued, she has a bad cop list, the Brady list. And I think a prosecutor in Brooklyn has a Brady list and maybe a couple more. Do you see this kind of like catching on?
You know, I hope so. It is my hope ultimately that we have both state and federal lists that allow people not to go from agency to agency, because what we were finding is that some of the officers who ended up on our list, I can think of two in particular, had lost their jobs with other agencies and found their way into this one and ultimately onto the list. So if your certification is not revoked, you are free to go to another agency and start fresh all the way over, having not changed any ways that you patrol, that you interact with people, or adjusting to the culture that actually serves the people versus killing them.
Wow, that is crazy.
What should we do as citizens on the federal level? Because I think that's where the majority of the change is going to come. I mean, state level, yes, that's fine, but federally, it's a different story.
You know, I think it's important on both. Change really does happen two ways. It does start at the top because that's where the standard is set. If you look at the last 4 years prior to the current president taking office, that was a standard that was set that okayed certain things being said, things being done, hate crimes increasing, in looking at the data that supports that. It does, the attitude and the disposition and our expectations are started at the top. What happens is policy changes are the ones that need to happen at the local level, and then eventually they meet themselves in between. But if you have a bad standard and trying to make good policies, it's never going to go. If you have a good standard and you don't have changed policies, it's just rhetoric. So it's important for us to make certain that we are aligning the local level representation with the federal level representation that has good values, that cares about the people, that is service oriented, and then people at the local level who are go-getters, who aren't afraid to make the change, who are competent to draft the type of change that needs to be drafted, and who are willing to get in the communities, hear what they have to say, and bring all the things that they desire to fruition.
Wow. What on your wish list? What would you like to see done nationwide?
Black people not being killed, for one. Let's start there, by police unjustly. Let's start there. You know, I would love for us to be on a place where we can have conversation about common ground. You know, it's literally we started this culture where the minute someone says something, the loudest voice has to be the one that finds a way to disagree with it. And then that further, you know, divides us in the conversation, instead of saying, here's an issue. This is where I stand on this issue. This is where you stand on this issue. Are there any common grounds that we think we can find on these particular issues? And I think that's where we have to start. It has to be on a humane, with human dignity type conversations versus the judgment. You know, I often liken it to the way that many, I won't say all of them, many conservative Republicans have hijacked Christianity, you know, that talk about, you know, the hard handle, the hard spoon, and you're going to hell. And, you know, they don't portray Christians, which is Christ-like, but they want to be Godians, like and I'm making that up. You know, they want to be God who make a determination versus, you know, the other part that we are often taught about mercy, you know, about the least, the lost, you know, about the people that matter, about compassion, and about love conquering all. Those are the things that we have to understand in our conversations. We've got to lead with love. And I don't say that, you know, as an innocent, you know, naive person. I say that as in, I believe love never fails. We've got to be mindful, use resources, and understand that wisdom must be practiced, and how we do it. There's avenues, but our foundation must be in respecting humanity and human dignity of all people. That's where we have to get a new starting point, in my opinion. And from there, we can begin to branch off, hopefully making more connections so that we can see the change. That even if we don't agree with someone, at least there's a level of satisfaction versus dehumanization on the other side.
Wow. We got a question from Orlando, Florida. Jay Fortune said, "Thank you for your service, State Attorney Ayala. Do you think we'll ever see justice for I can't say the guy name.
Salatus.
Yes, Melvin, that was killed back in the wintertime by Orange County Deputy Sheriff. What are your thoughts?
That is an open and active case over which I was a state attorney, which is open as well. So I'm going to respect the work of Ms. Worrell and what they have in front of them. What I can tell you, Jay, is that it's a tall mountain we have to climb. Like it is and I say that not because we don't acknowledge what we see. I'm speaking generally now. I'm saying how we define justice, we can't even get on the same page as that. How we define innocence, how we define a threat, our definitions are rooted in the history of a monolithic tone in the legislature and with prosecutors that tends to reflect the white male majority. Versus us understanding that those definitions can be and should be fluid. So while you're beginning to diversify state attorneys' offices and you're beginning to diversify legislatures, which then changes the conversation and ultimately jurors, it should change the approach in the end of how we determine whether or not we can see justice for people who are killed. There's so many dynamics that make it difficult, that places a lot of burden on a prosecutor to do things that the law just may not allow us to do, which is why it's important to have people who have practiced get engaged with the making of the laws. I just think it's really, really, really important for us to understand that a prosecutor cannot do everything. There are requirements that he or she must follow, but that's what makes the job extremely hard, because as state attorney, we all take an oath to follow the law. We take an oath to pursue justice, and too often those things don't align. So that's the biggest issue.
Wow. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you will come back.
I will, absolutely. I always do when Paul calls. He knows how to get me.
Yeah. Talking to your husband, Dave, he's been like your agent. So I'll always go through him. He's your number one fan and everything. And I just really appreciate. I got to get this question out because this coming from the Democratic chairperson.
I see Wes.
From Wes in Orange County, Orlando. And so Wes says, what do you see as the biggest obstacle to meaningful police reform here in Florida? You're seeing firsthand some of the garbage excuses used to conduct traffic stops, which have led to violence. What steps need to be taken to prevent these unnecessary stops?
The truth is, it's a mindset and the culture at the top. It's very similar to what I talked about when I was saying where change happens. Even locally, if you reduce that, there are so many officers who try to portray an image of community policing as best they can. Some of the school resource officers, some people who are so committed to use their badge to truly serve the people. That doesn't always make its way up to the top. There's so many political agendas by the time you reach the top that begin to confine people and limit the change. So Wes, I think the biggest obstacle is a heart's desire from those at the top to really want to see the change and be willing to be bold in it and suffer whatever consequences. I think that people are afraid of losing power. I think people are afraid of tarnishing an image, and therefore we are preserving power and image over life and death. And that is a serious reality that we have to be mindful of.
Do you think Sheriff Mina, who's a Democrat, want to see change?
Sheriff Mina is the one who was the Orlando police chief when I was stopped by the police.
Okay. Wow.
There you go. There you go.
Can it change? Do you think he can, his perception, his opinion, you think all that can change, evolve? Oh my God.
We have another question. We got another question online.
Before we go, Kristen Buckman over in Accra, Ghana says the next Kamala Harris. Thank you for watching in Ghana, West Africa. Mr. Stark said, do you think the legal system supports white supremacy? Wow.
It was built upon white supremacy. Let's be very honest about how we got here, starting from slavery with the slave patrols, moving on to the time with the Jim Crow laws, the civil rights era, the how we create laws, how we do stiffer sentencing, who is impacted, the expansion of misdemeanor crimes, the habitualization of misdemeanor crimes to make them felony crimes, mass incarceration now being the new way that we house Black, brown, and poor people. Absolutely. I think that it is a system that has got to be dealt with at the roots of it, but that is going to take time for us to even weave our way down to the roots in order to identify the true systemic and systematic issues that go on. So yes, I do think that it is a problematic system. I tell people every day, prosecutors, including mentioned Vice President Kamala Harris, took a lot of hits for being a prosecutor. And the reality is the system was created in a manner that prosecutors do harm. That's just the nature of it. So anyone who's interested in myself or anyone else saying, well, they're causing harm, that's the nature of the job and how it was set up. The difference between me and other prosecutors who are trying to think progressively and reform as best we can is that we're not focused on the machinery. We're focused on the casualties created by the machinery. So while we're in there, we understand that things are happening, but we also understand that that's where change is going to happen as well.
Oh my God! Do you have a fan page? You got to get that. Get Dave. Dave got to set that up. We got to get this right. The world need to know about Aramis Ayala.
Yeah, because it's like we can't lose strong Black women like you. We need you. As a man, I'm married to a woman with 2 master's degrees, and we need women like you. Not to say we. Us men don't need to be out there doing it, but we need women like you. We can't lose women like you.
I said I wasn't going anywhere, not as in I said I wasn't rerunning for state attorney. That didn't say I'm going anywhere. I said I took a minute. I pressed pause.
Good. Yeah, but we still need you in a position where that change can come.
I hope
Understood.
You understand what I'm saying? You changed it because you was a state attorney.
Yeah. I can imagine if you get a position, another position with some power.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I can only imagine if you was a legislator or a governor or a vice president or a Supreme Court justice,
attorney general.
Right. I can only imagine the changes that would come from you if you were in those roles. You have to be in those roles. What is that Judge Gregory C. Pittman always told us, Paul? Either you
at the table or you're at the meal. If you're not at the table, you're at the meal. You got to be at the table. You got to be present.
And we need you strong Black women to be out there. I salute you, Queen, and your husband. And your husband, because he another real one too. We chopped it up with him.
Hey, Dave from New York, he want to go holler at them cops, but you probably had to tell him, baby, no, hold up, we're gonna do this my way. If my way don't work, when I don't run, then you can holler.
You fly on the wall.
All right. Hey, Aramis, got to go. Thank you so much for making our time.
God bless you all. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And to everyone out there, thank you all for your support. Keep doing your part. Do your part. We all have a role to play.
All right. Back to more music, the Afternoon Jam.